Hi guys, my name's Andrew and today I'm driving a Genesis G70 3.3T. Since their first foray into the American market in the late 1980s, Hyundai has done one thing better than just about anyone else: value. In 2007, the Korean brand launched the Genesis, a progressive, modern rear-wheel drive sports sedan. Squarely aimed at the competitive German offerings, Hyundai marketed the Genesis as having the performance of a BMW 5 Series and the interior packaging of a 7 Series, but at the price of a 3 Series. Depending on your market, engines ranged from a 3.3-liter V6 up to a 5-liter V8 over the first generation's 8-year lifespan. But a couple of years after the launch of the sedan, Hyundai introduced a two-door version, aptly named the Genesis Coupe. Pre-debut photos, leaked photos, pictured the Genesis Coupe with a Ford Mustang, presumably one of its biggest targets. And Hyundai's CEO at the time described it as being designed to deliver a driving experience that challenges cars like the Infiniti G37. The New York Auto Show launch featured a demonstration of the Coupe's abilities with power slides and burnouts and things like that. Fast forward a decade, and Genesis is still Hyundai's sort of premium sporty division, but it's now a standalone brand. And while it's still a four-door sedan, the G70 very much follows the ethos of that old Genesis Coupe. It's the Koreans' answer to the BMW 3 Series, a small premium sedan with a focus on driving dynamics. The BMW 3 Series has always been the benchmark for the entry-level sports sedan segment, and the current G20 generation M340i, which I reviewed last year, definitely still holds that title. It's incredibly competent at everything it does, and well-rounded at that. But it's expensive. Even on the pre-owned market, nice, clean examples, low mileage, are still over $40,000. So what if it was possible to get a sedan that's almost all the way to the M340i for a fraction of the price, maybe $10,000 less or more? Well, that's this car, the Genesis G70 3.3T. For one, the G70 is gorgeous to look at. Finished in Majorca blue, of course, I'm partial to it, my favorite color being blue, but the whole exterior is a nice blend of elegance and few sharper lines with good rear-wheel drive proportions. Up front, you'll find a decidedly Audi-shaped grille as well as full LED headlights. They didn't do a particularly good job of integrating this radar sensor, but hey, at least they tried. The rear end is really the only weak point of this design, in my opinion. It's just a little bit bland, and it's not as special as the front end or side profiles would have you believe. And, of course, the fake exhaust tips are disappointing, but not uncommon nowadays. Personally, I don't think the G70 sounds all that special either, although it's not bad for what it is. In between the two fascias, pre-facelift G70s came with either these diamond cut or dark gray 19-inch alloy wheels, which have from the factory a staggered tire setup, two 25s up front and two 55s in the back. Interestingly, this tire setup is the same no matter whether you get the rear-wheel drive version like this one or the all-wheel drive version of the G70. And of course behind them they are hiding big red Brembo brakes. Inside, the cabin is a study in simple luxury because there's very little glitz or flair, but excellent fitment, good materials, and great ergonomics. On one hand, the driver-focused dashboard layout here is great, but at the same time, there's pretty much nothing going on the passenger side of the dashboard, either physically or visually. The infotainment screen here is a little on the smaller side and not particularly well integrated into this design, but the software, on the other hand, is simple and easy to use, and that's what you want. Most of the controls are on the cheaper side, as for the most part they are Hyundai parts bin components, like for instance the stalks on the back of the wheel or the buttons on the front of the wheel. So a lot of them aren't necessarily up to the German level of clickiness that you'd expect, per se, but they do still feel perfectly fine, frankly. A comfortable driving position in here is very easy to find, and the seats have a ton of adjustment. Of course, I would like a little bit more tilt adjustment from the driver's seat, just because I have longer legs, but there is a cushion extender, so that does help with that. There's also a ton of features in here for the money. You can't see it on camera, but there's a heads-up display in front of me. Of course, you have Apple CarPlay in here, dual-zone automatic climate control, ventilated seats, which is a lovely touch, and all the safety stuff you'd expect, along with the sunroof that is pretty much as big as you can get for a single panel. The rear seat of the G70 is a weird mix of cost-cutting. For one, you don't get the same fancy speaker grills back here, and the materials are a little bit on the cheaper side. There's only one USB port back here for charging, but at the same time, you have heated back seats, and there's also two little buttons on the side of this front passenger seat to adjust it from the back, like a Maybach. And at just 10.5 cubic feet, the trunk is also one of the smallest in the segment. But for some reason, it is powered. Once you get the G70 out on the road, you notice two things right away. One, the turn-in is incredibly engaging. And two, the 8-speed automatic transmission is simultaneously very smooth and very annoying. It's definitely smoother than the ZF8 in either the M340i or my previous Audi S4, but the way it's tuned in this particular car, it auto upshifts no matter what. I will say it does hold the revs longer if you're using the paddles than if you're just in regular automatic, but there's also no way to lock it completely into manual mode. If you don't use the paddles for a certain amount of time, it will just revert back to regular drive, and there's nothing you can do about it. Outside of the artificially generated additional sound, the G70's engine and exhaust note are on the quieter side. They're not a bad tone by any means, but frankly, they're just really not that interesting. The M340i, for instance, burbles and crackles constantly, and even my S4, which S4s typically are known for a kind of vacuum cleaner-esque sort of airy exhaust note. Even my S4 sounded a little bit more fun than this, because if you're lucky in this car, maybe you'll get a farty upshift at some point, but that's about it. The G70 also lacks adaptive dampers unless you spring for the absolute top-end sport package, though to be fair, the Germans don't actually include them as standard either. With this base suspension setup, I have to say the ride is definitely on the softer side. It is definitely more tuned for comfort compared to the 3 Series, but the rear-wheel drive characteristics of it and the playfulness, the engagement of it really makes up for it though. On paper, the rear-wheel drive G70 3.3T does 0 to 60 in 4.5 seconds. That is, of course, with a 1-foot rollout subtracted. And in testing, this is actually pretty bang on. We did a couple runs with the Draggy, and with the rollout it was 4.51 and 4.52. So that's definitely accurate. The BMW, interestingly, the M340i rear-wheel drive, is quoted on BMW's website as 4.4 seconds 0 to 60. But we all know how much the Germans tend to underrate their power figures, so in practice the M340i is easily a half second quicker than that. And I should know, I've driven one and tested it. On a similar note, I wish Genesis had underrated their fuel economy figures for this car, because 20 mpg combined is pretty much the same as the new Toyota Tundra in the hybrid variant that I drove in a video last week. And for comparison, that's a big full-size half-ton pickup truck. It is also a twin-turbo V6, but it also weighs 6,000 pounds. Hopefully you'll be spending less on maintenance and repairs than the Deutsche sedans though, because frankly Hyundai parts for one are just going to be cheaper no matter what, but Hyundai, or Genesis rather, does include a 10-year 100,000 mile warranty for the first owner. It drops to 60,000 miles, 5 years 60,000 miles after the second owner, but I mean that's still a perfectly good warranty. For this, plus the damn good driving experience, the G70 is truly a Genesis. It really excels when it comes to value in every single way. It really is 9/10 of an M340i for 75% of the price. I mean, this car was $27,000 for whatever that's worth. But, you know, the only thing missing really is the brand recognition. But I suppose if the car is this good, who cares what it wears? As always, thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up, or consider subscribing for plenty more content to come.